Imagine an elite assassin unit where every single member is missing both of their pinky fingers.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a seriously chilling image.
Right. It's just so deeply visceral. And the reason it's so unsettling is because your pinky is actually the most crucial finger for grip strength, like especially when you're holding a weapon.
Which makes sense. So by sacrificing it, these assassins are, physically trading a piece of their wholeness for deadly capability.
Exactly. And today, our deep dive is looking at a brand that uses brutally dark fantasy details exactly like this to teach its audience a very real, honestly, incredibly raw lesson about survival. The lesson basically being you don't ever get out of the dark hole.
It's a striking metaphor, really, and it's just one small piece of the official locked canon lore document for a brand called Empowerment Echo, or EE for short.
Yeah, EE.
Right. So what we're examining today is how this brand meticulously constructs this ultra-realistic dark fantasy universe. And they're doing it not as an escape from reality, but as a framework to actually help people survive it.
And let me just say, if you, the listener, have ever felt like you're fighting for your absolute survival, like if you're in a season where seeing a pastel-colored, live, laugh, love quote on social media just makes you want to throw your phone at the wall.
I think we've all been there.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you're going to want to stick around for this because Empowerment Echo is officially designated as a warrior mindset brand. Our mission today is to figure out how they use corrupted armor, skull masks, and generational trauma to forge a very real philosophy about loss and endurance for you.
Right. And to fully grasp how they achieve that kind of emotional resonance, we first have to look at the strict structural blueprint of their content. I mean, the visual DNA of Empowerment Echo is completely locked in by this document.
It's intense.
It really is. It outlines a brand voice that must be short, cold, dark, and entirely warrior-coded. They explicitly mandate that there is absolutely no soft language allowed. Zero.
But wait, if you're trying to build a massive, engaged audience online, why would you lock yourself into such a, claustrophobic set of rules? Doesn't that just get incredibly monotonous after a while?
You'd think so, yeah.
I mean, if I were a visual artist working for them, I think I'd feel completely suffocated by those parameters. How does removing all the color and fluff actually attract people instead of just boring them to death?
It's counterintuitive, I know. But what's fascinating here is that these constraints absolutely force focus. I mean, think about the modern digital environment for a second.
Oh, the doom scrolling.
Exactly. When you're doom scrolling, your brain is just being bombarded by dopamine hits, right? Hyper-stimulating graphics, loud music, just a million different colors. By stripping all that away, the brand creates this sort of visual vacuum that commands attention.
Okay, so it's almost like a palate cleanser for your overstimulated brain.
Precisely. And they enforce this through shockingly specific conventions. For instance, all text overlays on their images must be in sentence case, never title case, never all caps.
Wait, why sentence case specifically? Does it really make a difference if the first letter of every word is capitalized?
It makes a massive psychological difference, actually. Title case feels like corporate marketing. It feels like an advertisement.
Like they're selling you something.
Right. Sentence case, on the other hand, it mimics that raw, urgent text message you might get from a friend who's in the trenches. It bypasses your brain's built-in ad blocker. It feels like a lived experience rather than a polished campaign.
You really can't ignore it.
Exactly. It creates a feeling of uncompromising discipline. And that rigid discipline in the design perfectly mirrors the rigid warrior mindset the brand is trying to promote.
They're essentially programming your focus.
Yeah.
And the tools they use to create this are just as strictly mandated. The document states they must use specific AI platforms, namely Midjourney, for their static images.
Right.
And for anyone who hasn't gone down that rabbit hole, Midjourney is this incredibly advanced AI image generator. The prompt rules for EE are locked.
Yeah.
Always portrait orientation, always ultra-realistic, dark, epic fantasy.
And for video, they utilize Pixverse, which is an AI tool specifically designed for generating short, really highly textured video clips.
Yeah, those clips are stunning.
They are. And the instruction there is crucial. Keep it movement focused, but do not over-describe the action. They let the atmosphere and the slow, deliberate camera motion carry the weight of the imagery.
It's like breaking down the ego in a military boot camp. You strip away the individuality, the bright colors, and all the adjectives, so only the primal instinct is left.
That's a great way to put it.
But honestly, a strict aesthetic needs a soul to carry it. Otherwise, you're just looking at a really intense, beautifully rendered poster.
Yeah.
And you can't just sell discipline to someone who is, actively grieving or failing in their real life. They need a reason to use that discipline.
Absolutely.
So where does the brand get its emotional weight? Like, who is actually wearing this armor?
Well, that brings us to the core of this entire universe, the Saints family. This is the bloodline at the center of the lore, whose legacy eventually fractures into 4 distinct factions. And it all begins with 2 foundational figures, Dorian and Syla Saints.
Okay, let's start with Dorian, the patriarch. He's the founder of the Order of the Wolf. Visually, he's completely locked in. He wears this light tan brown bone skull mask, heavily textured with deep, dark blade strike cracks.
Very intimidating.
Right. And he has a tattered crimson red hood, corrupted dark plate armor layered with chainmail. He represents survival, absolute loyalty, and an unbreakable pack mentality. The lore describes him as the man who teaches that the ground is just where you rest before you rise.
The cracked bone mask is such a vital detail there. It's not shining, pristine knight armor, it's organic material that has been repeatedly fractured and held together. It shows that he takes the hits.
He's been through it.
Exactly. But there's a more crucial visual detail the document stresses about Dorian. Through that terrifying battle-worn skull mask, his eyes are visible and they are human brown. The lore explicitly mandates that they must never glow red.
Which is such a massive subversion of the standard dark fantasy trope. Like, usually the scary warrior in the skull mask has glowing red demon eyes. Why go out of your way to make sure they're just, ordinary brown eyes?
Because if we connect this to the bigger picture, keeping his eyes human brown grounds the entire fantasy in reality. It tells the audience that Dorian is not a monster. He isn't some supernatural entity immune to pain.
He's just a guy.
He is just a man who refuses to surrender. It emphasizes that his level of endurance, his ability to take a devastating hit and keep rising, is a distinctly human capability.
That immediately makes it accessible. You don't have to be a superhero to survive, you just have to be stubbornly human.
Precisely.
And then there's his partner, Syla Saints, the matriarch. She founded the Order of the Veil. Her visual look is entirely different from Dorian's heavy cracked armor. She wears these flowing silver robes and a sheer black veil. The text describes her as graceful, but incredibly formidable.
Right, they are total opposites in that way.
Yeah. While Dorian is forged in the physical brutality of battle, Syla represents transformation and rebirth.
She embodies the deep old philosophical wisdom of the bloodline because pure survival alone isn't really enough. If you just survive a traumatic event, you're merely existing. Something has to be rebuilt or reborn from the fire you just walked through.
You have to change.
Exactly. Syla represents the idea that you do not come out of the dark as the same person who went in. The veil she wears literally and symbolically separates who you were from who you are becoming.
I really like that. It reminds me of how, a virus mutates to survive an antibiotic.
Yeah.
You can't just absorb the hit. You have to fundamentally change your composition to ensure you don't get destroyed the next time.
That's a very apt analogy.
Dorian is the raw endurance, but Syla is the necessary mutation. You absolutely need both elements to keep a bloodline or just a person alive in a hostile environment.
That's an excellent way to conceptualize their dynamic. They represent the necessary balance between enduring trauma and transforming because of it. But of course, no foundation in a dark fantasy, or in life for that matter, remains untested for long.
Right, because you don't get to be an unyielding survivor without taking some serious, life-altering hits. For the Saints family, that test comes in the form of a massive, shattering betrayal that breaks the family apart and tragically leads to Syla losing her life in battle.
And the source of that devastation is the primary antagonist of this entire saga, the Franirth Empire, led by Lord Barbcatios.
Now, I have to admit, when I first saw the name Lord Barbcatios in the Franirth Empire, I kind of rolled my eyes a bit. I thought, here we go, another faceless, generic, evil overlord sitting in a dark, jagged tower who just wants to conquer the world because he hates goodness.
A classic trope.
Yeah, exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting. This is not a geopolitical conflict. It's entirely personal. Barbcatios is actually Syla's uncle. He murdered his own brother, Syla's father, just to seize power. And then he raised Syla inside the empire, feeding her this massive, lifelong lie about what happened to her family.
It is an incredibly intimate, insidious betrayal. And if you're listening to this and wondering why this imaginary family drama matters to you, think about the worst betrayal you've ever experienced in your own life.
Yeah, like a real-world punch to the gut.
Right. Maybe a business partner who stole from you or a mentor who threw you under the bus. This lore is specifically designed to mirror that exact feeling of having your reality ripped away by someone you trusted. It's telling the audience your personal betrayal is epic enough to be written in a history book.
Exactly. When Syla finally discovers the truth, it completely shatters her world. Any connection she had to the Empire collapses. It destroys any chance for peace, and that fallout is what ultimately leads to her death.
And this section of the document introduces one of Empowerment Echo's most critical themes, loss as a permanent changer. Which brings us back to that terrifying detail you mentioned at the very beginning, the hand of the Lord.
The elite assassin unit missing their pinky fingers.
Yes, Barbcatios' elite guard. The initiation requires sacrificing both pinky fingers. It's a physical manifestation of permanent loss in exchange for deadly capability.
It's so dark.
It visually reinforces the idea that surviving in a corrupt world always costs you a piece of yourself. You never walk away whole. You trade your innocence or your trust or your comfort in order to gain the armor you need to survive.
That is such a heavy toll. And that cost is so heavily paid by Syla.
Yeah.
Her death at the hands of this empire becomes the defining wound of the entire Saints bloodline.
Yeah.
And how her two sons react to this immense, suffocating grief is what fractures the family and creates the next two factions in the lore.
The first son is Adonius Saints. He is the founder of the Order of the Dragon.
His visual lock is striking. He's this dark fantasy warrior bonded with a massive teal dragon named Quetzalcoatl, who has these piercing yellow eyes. Adonius clearly carries the balance of his parents. He represents earned strength and bonded power.
Not just captured power.
Right. The lore explicitly notes that this isn't just a tactical alliance where he captured a beast to use in a war. It's a spiritual bond. The dragon chose him. It's about loyalty and alliances that are forged in the exact same fire.
You can see exactly how Adonius is processing his grief. He responds to the trauma of losing his mother by building a stronger external support system. He fundamentally believes that true power is never wielded alone. It's shared between those who have proven themselves worthy of each other's trust.
That makes total sense.
It's a highly constructive communal response to profound loss.
So Adonius goes to therapy, essentially, and builds a support network. But then you have the other son, Octavius Saints. He is the founder of the Order of Chaos. Right. And this guy is fundamentally, irreparably changed by his mother's death.
Very different reaction.
Completely. His visual rules are intense. He wears a black hood, a deeply scarred skull mask, and a spiked gauntlet. And remember how we talked about Dorian's human brown eyes staying brown to show his humanity? Octavius's brown eyes turn gold.
The document is very careful to note that this color change is the sheer force of his grief and rage manifesting physically. Octavius operates completely outside the established rules of engagement.
He's a wild card.
Absolutely. His core belief is that order is just a tool used by corrupt people in power, like his great-uncle Barbcatios. Therefore, sometimes absolute chaos is the only valid response to a corrupt empire, because chaos is the one thing the empire cannot predict or control.
So, I really have to push back here. Is Octavius the villain of this universe? Because usually in any story, the guy in the black hood running the Order of Chaos, whose eyes literally mutate from rage, is the edgelord we're supposed to root against.
Right, the classic antagonist.
Yeah, it sounds like a cautionary tale of someone becoming the monster they were fighting. Is the brand telling people to just embrace destructive rage?
This raises an important question about how we socially categorize responses to grief. The lore specifically and emphatically clarifies that Octavius did not become evil, he became harder. He embodies a crucial pillar for the brand's philosophy. The reality that sometimes loss isn't something you can simply get over or heal from in a healthy way. Sometimes it's a dark energy that you have to actively weaponize to fuel your fight when you have absolutely nothing left to lose.
So he isn't the villain, he's the emergency backup generator.
Exactly. Think of it like a controlled demolition. When discipline and standard operating procedures aren't enough to survive an overwhelming threat, Octavius represents the necessary willingness to tear down the existing structures to survive. He is the part of you that does what has to be done when playing by the rules will get you killed.
So what does this all mean? We have these incredible visual constraints, a deeply rich mythological history, and these profoundly different psychological responses to grief. Understanding how Adonius and Octavius weaponize their trauma leads us to what I think is the most mind-blowing critical revelation in this entire document.
It really recontextualizes everything.
It does. It explains exactly why this specific lore feels so heavy and visceral to the audience reading it.
Yes. The sheer weight of it comes from the fact that it isn't entirely fiction.
Empowerment Echo is autobiographical. The line between this sweeping dark fantasy lore and the creator's actual real life is razor-thin by design. For example, Syla Saints, the matriarch. She was directly inspired by Isabel de los Santos, the real-life mother of the brand's creator.
Right.
Her name and her memory are the literal bedrock of this entire universe.
The document explicitly states that when Syla is lost in battle, and when Octavius's eyes turn gold from the sheer suffocating weight of that grief, that is grief the creator knows intimately and personally, it's lived experience translated directly into myth.
There's even a specific visual prompt they use for the AI generators called the Unmasked Warrior. It produces an image of a bearded, throne-seated character looking directly at the camera. And the rules state that this prompt is specifically reserved for man beneath the mask, content beats.
The human element.
Yeah, it's used for the vulnerable, personal, human side of the brand. For me, reading that section was this massive aha moment. Suddenly, all those incredibly strict visual rules, the dark themes, the total refusal to use soft pastel language, it all makes perfect sense. This isn't a clever marketing performance designed by a boardroom.
Not at all.
It's a survival mechanism. It is a deeply personal testimony wearing warrior armor.
The psychological brilliance of this strategy really cannot be overstated. The creator has taken their own personal hell, their deepest, most agonizing real-world grief, and externalized it into a mythic arena. And by turning it into a brand, by putting it out into the world and establishing these 4 distinct factions, the wolf, the veil, the dragon, and the chaos, they are actively inviting their audience to adopt these avatars to process their own real-world struggles.
Right. The lore document actually lists these locked content lines that have been used by the brand on social media. And when you realize they come from a real place of devastating pain, they hit you so much harder.
Oh, absolutely.
You see a sentence case caption with one red word that says, "I'm on my knees, but it's not over." Or, "Hell wasn't a punishment, it was practice." And my personal favorite, "You can't imprison what was forged in pain and loss."
It fundamentally elevates the brand from simply selling a, tough guy aesthetic on the internet to offering genuine psychological scaffolding for people who are suffering. The lore explicitly states that the dark fantasy arena is a metaphor for daily life. Every hard season you endure, every betrayal you face at work or in a relationship, every profound loss you suffer, that is the fight. You are always in the arena.
And by framing it this way, it helps the audience see their own struggles, not as senseless, random suffering, but as epic battles in an ongoing war where they still maintain agency, where they can still choose to rise, even if their armor is cracked.
Precisely. It redefines what dark fantasy can be used for. It's not escapism, it's psychological equipment. We've journeyed from the mechanics of sentence case visual rules and the neuroscience of that one red word demanding your focus, all the way down to the deep, real-world grief that underpins the Saints Bloodline. Right. Empowerment Echo uses the aesthetics of epic fantasy to provide armor for the very real world.
It reminds us that Dorian's endurance, Syla's transformation, Adonius's bonded strength, and even Octavius's chaotic rage all have their necessary, valid place when you're just trying to survive the empires of our daily lives. Which brings us right back to exactly where we started today. That battlefield we all find ourselves on from time to time, dodging incoming fire that doesn't seem to stop.
It's universal, really.
It is. So I want to leave you with a provocative thought to mull over the next time you feel overwhelmed. We've talked about how this creator built an entire dark fantasy universe to process their personal grief and share their resilience with the world. What if you took your own biggest challenges, your worst days, your toxic environments, your own personal empires, and mythologized them? If you had to create a warrior avatar to fight your daily battles, what would your armor look like, and what would your absolute rule of survival be?
A very powerful question to ask yourself the next time you find yourself in the trenches.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep fighting your battles, whatever they may be, and we'll see you next time.